Welcome to another episode of Top Lines and Tails, the nation's favourite livestock podcast. And as always, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Harbro, for their continued support with Top Lines and Tails. This week on Top Lines and Tails, we're going to Wales. At least I think you're in Wales. I've got Steve Jones on here, and Steve and I have known each other a long time, similar age, both been in the industry a long time. And Steve, you've put a lot back into the industry and had your successes with it too.
Yes, well, thanks for the invitation on, Andy. I just feel that having listened to quite a number of your podcasts, I don't know whether when I get to the States to get invited on that I'm getting very old or I really do have something to share. But thanks for the invite. Okay. Yes, I've had a very privileged opportunities to work with some of the best livestock in the UK.
And the world. I think we'll go on to the world in a minute, but let's just go chronologically through this. And Steve, I said I knew you in the 80s really through the Blue Domain sheep, but a lot of people will remember you, of course, from your days bringing out cattle for Esmore Evans and then later Robert Graham, and we'll go through those in a little bit more detail. But you started, I think, in the dairy industry. Would that be right? You dairy first?
Yes, yeah. My parents were dairy farming in Rossett, and they were Rossett Holsteins, and obviously the link to that was I worked with Dehaven Holsteins, which was at the time in the late 70s and early 80s. They were the premier herd of Holsteins in the country, imported 300 cows or heifers out of Canada in the early 70s, I believe.
300, wow.
Yeah, and there was a time prior to milk quota that we were making more out of selling breeding stock than we were milking cows. So that's the value of the stock that we had there. We had some of the best in the country. So it gave me a little introduction into top stock and showing.
Well, and importing as well, Steve. I mean, if you're involved in importation of 300 cows or 300 cows that come in there, the Canadian Holstein revolutionised the dairy world, didn't it?
That's correct. He was a businessman, Sam Noble, from out of Liverpool. There, he was in the sack business in Liverpool, and he got together with. For those of your listeners that do know anything about dairy, we have Harold Nicholson, which is. Probably he was the leading sort of guy in the stockman in the dairy world and the Holstein. So I had privilege just to pick up on where he was. He just moved on before I moved there as a herdsman, and certainly he imported the stock and got a fantastic group of young cows that led their way in the breed for many years.
And you went into the showing, I think that again was your first thing, and slightly different showing dairy cows to what you moved on to, but a good grounding. We learn a lot from the dairy industry, can't we?
Oh, we can, yes. So let me just touches on something when I think that was the first introduction to showing. Well, my first introduction was showing was as a very young boy. I was showing budgerigars and canaries, but preparation and picking the right ones was important then. But then coming to Dehaven was quite an up for me because they were leading cattle. And it was in 1984. We had the intermediate champion at the National Holstein Show, Dehaven, Lucifer Reben. That was my first time sort of in the ring. So it was straight to the top, and I kind of enjoyed the glory there and bringing out the cattle in the right way. So, and then went on in 87, still at Dehaven. We had the Supreme Champion at the National Holstein Show, and I bowed out from the Holsteins then and moved on to the beef side. Yeah,
that Supreme Champion, you say that quite nonchalantly, but that is the ultimate prize at the Supreme Champion at the National Holstein Show. It doesn't get any bigger and higher than that.
Doesn't get any better than that. That is the national level of the Holsteins, and we managed to bring out the cow to do the job at that show. So,
and the huge numbers in some of those classes as well. The shows back then, there would be hundreds of the buggers.
Yes, yeah, and it was like, it was a big thing. Now, the showing is a little different now, but certainly then, there was packed ringside, and it was a big show of top cows. Yeah.
Huge spectacle. Yeah, I've been to it. I went to it back in those days. And then you say you moved on to the beef, and it wasn't just beef. Of course, you went to Esmore Evans, and Esmore's been on this podcast and shared some of his story information with us. Not all of it, I hasten to add. And you went to Esmore, I think 88. Would I be right, Steve? How did you get that job? What happened there?
I was just ready to move on, and it wasn't just that we'd just won the National Holstein Show, but I thought, I just felt like I needed to move on. I was a herdsman, and I was sort of a junior herdsman at Dehaven. There was Alan Lumley was the main herdsman there, and a fantastic guy, and I learned a lot from him. But I wanted to move on, and just by chance, and I knew of Esmore Evans, and I did see an advert there, and I thought, I'm just going to just throw my hat into the ring here and see what would happen. And the minute we spoke, I mean, we were on the same page. And people think that what people said to me then, how can you move from Holsteins to beef? And I said, well, everything is just the same. I mean, we were prepared in stock to the highest level, and the big thing to me was that Esmo was AIing all his cows as I was at Dehaven. So, it was breeding for where each female was lacking. And quickly Esmo and I got to discuss, he would say, well, I think we'll use this bull because she needs help here and there. And I mean, it was brilliant. I mean, I was just fascinated by it.
Just to clarify, of course, that Esmo is actually a vet as well, working vet, and a very hard-working man, was there. And I think, am I right in thinking he didn't even have a stockman when you went there? I think, did you replace somebody?
Roy Crockett. Roy Crockett was there. Just he left Goldies, came down for I think just a short time with Esmo, and then and went back up north again. And there was the theory then that Roy Crockett was sent down by Jim Goldie to find out what Esmo was doing, and then come back with the info. But I don't think that was the fact at all. But Roy was a great guy. He'd already set things up. And what we were doing, that was great.
Okay, but it were big numbers, wasn't it? I mean, as well saying himself. I mean, you were up like 200 plus Charolais cows. I mean, I suppose you'd bring other breeds in later on, maybe when you're there. But it was huge numbers of cattle.
Yeah, when I was there was definitely over 100 Charolais cows. But the factor that Esmo would miss saying would be that because we were doing quite a bit of embryo work, I mean, we had probably as many recipients too. We'd had over 100, maybe 150 recipients carrying embryos. So it was a very busy place for sure.
Mm-hmm. Of course, and by the time you got there, Esmo would have the herd. Well, I don't quite know when. I can't remember, should I say, when Wesno set it up. But he'd probably be 10 years into his game by then, and hitting the top. And you arrived there pretty much at the right time. I think started winning with in the shows anyway, as well. Of course, we'll go on in a second what you did on the bull sales, but the show side of it, Esmo himself talked about the seed cow lapping for Tulip, who was fantastic, and you were the man in front of that.
Yeah, she was the stalwart of the day for me anyway. Just a great cow. And I've always any breed, any species. I mean, it's when you've got those right ones. The balance of a beast is important. And to me, you can't bring them out unless they're made right. And that cow was a tank of a cow, weighing over a ton. But I mean, from the nose end to the tip of her tail, she was a big solid cow.
We look back through some of these things, and we'll discuss Charolais for a second. The likes of Kilkenny Celia and animals coming further forward. But if people are asked one of the best Charolais cows they've seen, she's always in the top 2 or 3 of any breed, I think, as well. I mean, Tulip was just phenomenal. But then he went on and bred from her, and there's more of her family that did the same thing.
Yes, yeah, she was definitely the shining light for the shows. But behind that, there was plenty more cows that Esmo had, tried to purchase. There was a Lapping Fedrini, there was Coat Iris, which will come on to her breeding, and those type of cows. And I can remember Esmo saying it might have been Coat Iris, I think, that was obviously the behind the breeding of Director. But I think he tried to buy her on 2 occasions and not had enough money to do it, and then waited and finally got a hold of her as quite a mature cow and was able to take embryos from her. So, I mean, he knew he wanted that cow, but still wasn't going to blow any doors off at the time. So.
That's a polite way. Polite way of putting you careful with his money.
Yeah, us Welsh people, we're very people call us tight, but we're careful.
And just go on some of the shows there, Lapping for Tulip. I think I would say she's rarely been beaten, but she certainly. Am I right in thinking she went on? Certainly had a good run of shows at the Royal Welsh and the Royal as well, I think.
Yes, yeah, I think going back, it would be 1989 was my first show season out. So Tulip was a champion at the Royal Welsh, Charlotte champion. Then she was paired up with, I think at the time it was Hampton Aries from Tom Jones. Not that wasn't the singer, and she paired up with and won the Fitzhugh Trophy, which was quite an accolade. It was equal to the Burke Trophy in the day at the Royal. So I mean, it was the very top you could do there. So that was 89, and I came back in 90, and she won it again, the Fitzhugh Trophy, and again in 91 before I left Esmo. So I mean, she was rarely beaten, but she was a fantastic cow, and led away for the breed. It was a great opportunity to get out there with her.
And am I right in thinking she won the Burke as well? I know you've definitely handled the Burke winner. Was that her?
Yes, it was her. Yes, and that would be in 1991. That was the Burke Trophy. With Kylas Crackerjack, she was paired with at that time.
Of course, I mean, in McDonald, yeah. And, he was a huge bull, wasn't he? He was a monster. I remember him, but they were a big.
Bull, yeah, I think he sold for 28,000 in Perth the same time we sold that actor. So
yeah. And we'll go on to the sales then with Esmo. I mean, I'm sure Esmo's told you all his secrets, and you're not going to tell me any more than he was going to tell me. But he ran. Well, it started fairly early, I think, in the Perth sales. That was always his objective, was to sell bulls at the top at Perth, and of course, as you said, you hit the straps with Maerdy Director, overall champion. But wasn't it a world record price? I think at the time, 56,000 Guinness.
56,000 it was. Yeah, I mean, it was quite a sale. I mean, the show itself, I can remember now. Measure Raymond was the judge, so I mean, there was no favoritism there. I mean, he couldn't speak a word of English. He had a translator with him, and he just had his arms folded in the show ring there, and he would just point once and put you in the place, and folded arms again, point again, and bring it. I mean, it was just magnificent piece of judging, and he was bang on,
Well,
it was good for me anyway.
Bang on for you, because didn't you get senior champion and junior champion as well? You hit all three championships? Yeah.
No, just the two, senior and junior champion, and then we came out and Director was overall champion, and then just we had no idea at the time that there would be that much interest. We knew he was a good bull. He'd been shown through the summer, but to get in that ring, and it was televised because there was a Welsh TV program that was following Esmo at the time, was Di Jones with Kevin Glad, and it was great because we still have that footage available, and I think people tell me it's still on YouTube today. So
it often crops up on our Top Lines and Tails Facebook page, and we'll make sure it goes up again this week, because he was a good bull. You were a young man there, to be fair.
I was a young man. Yeah, people say to me, why aren't you smiling? And I said, I was doing a job. I mean, and that's what I've always done all my life, is do the job, and that's what. People say, "Oh, you need to smile." I said, "Look, I'm focused here. We have to get this done." And when we talk about shows, I said the show isn't over until the pictures are taken. No, people
true.
Always to win a show, and it's just, we'll take a picture after. No, when that animal's right, you get that.
Yeah.
Right away.
And that takes a lot of patience too. I mean, we've all been there, especially with some of the photographers of old. I won't mention names, who would be very picky and very slow. I think we've got a great bunch of photographers out there in the world now, in the livestock world now, certainly the McGregors, but all of them in there, Wayne and all the rest of them, do a great job. But they understand the animals, and they understand that animal's been out in a show ring for an hour and a half, and then he's going to get knackered and be tired and want that photograph then. And they understand to get on with it, don't they?
No, you have to. And I mean, I have all the patience and because I know exactly what they're trying to do. They know the picture they want. And quite often you could walk it right up there, position it, clap, and they say, that's perfect. And they know they have that picture. So that's all you need. But sometimes it takes a lot longer, and I'm happy to be there with them. So
yeah, sure. And I say you've done that all your days and still doing, I think. But and just move on, just carry on with that sale, though. I think of Maerdy Director, because it was a milestone sale and a huge. I mean, it made. I think Esmo got written up in the farmers, the Scottish farmer, I think, as the Welsh wizard, and he was, and he took that. But if he had the junior champion with Dormobile was 12,000 again, and it was big money.
That's correct.
Big money turned over there.
Yeah, we had. I think out of the show we had 7 bulls there, which was I kept reminding Esmo as years went on. Why don't we just go back to 7 bulls, because that was still the best sale. But he insisted on having 20, 25, 29 or whatever. But no, that sale we had 7 bulls up there. We had 5 first prize tickets. We had senior champion, junior champion, And the important thing, obviously, is the selling. So we had 7 bulls, and they total 108,000 for the 7. So that'd be in 1989, and it was 15,500 guineas in 89. I mean, that's quite a scoop. Bulls were good.
A lot of money. Be buying farms with that money back then, but or Desmond would be spending it wisely. Put it that way.
He would, and you know what? When you said about the secrets and that, and people used to say to me, so he's a vet, so what is it? And I used to say to them, I said, take the time to come down into deepest North Wales and walk up them hills and look at the breeding cows, because it's all about the females, And he put together a super set of females, and he knew how to match them to the right sires to create the next generation. And just expanding on that was I can remember, because I was only 26, I think, when I was working with Esmo first off, and there was a cow, because I used to quiz him about, trying to figure out what he was thinking. There was a cow there that he thought a lot of was Maerdy uranium. And every time you would look at it, it'd be the last cow you would take out the field. She was a small cow. She just always poor condition, never looked really powerful. She had got a good nose end and looked a decent cow. And I said, Desmo, what is it about her? And I know that he'd sold a bull, Maerdy Bob Powell, there a year or two before for 10,000, and I think she'd got 4 sons to sell between 8 and 10,000 in those days. And he said that was his focus, was to produce commercial bulls, because all those sold to commercial guys at that money. It wasn't to break a world record. But when I said, what is it about uranium? And he said the dam was Gargot, which was one of the best cows that ever came out of France in his eyes. So that straight away fed me the information about the breeding lines, And this cow was a step down in her phenotype, but could she ever put it out,
No, and Esmo did say when we had him on the podcast that he had been back to France and followed all the bloodlines in France, and he was again one step ahead of a lot of people, and a great man, and still is, and then, as if you'd not hit the straps high enough, then you then got poached by Robert Graham. Would that be right? Did you get poached by Robert, or did you decide to go there, or what was?
I did get poached by Robert. But let me tell you this little bit of it, and it's something that come to light when I was thinking about coming on here. It was the week after we'd sold Maerdy Director, and this just puts it in perspective. What happened with us at Esmo. So the week after, we were sitting in the farmhouse kitchen. About 9 o'clock one evening, there was one of the strip lights was flicking on and off. It was about done. We were eating fish and chips out of paper, and Esmo said, "You wouldn't think we just broke a world record, would you?" And that nothing changed. Yeah. And his focus to breeding was exactly the same. And what we were going to do that night, we were going out to flush cows and implant embryos at 9 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
So it's just his focus on the passion. And that we were a great team. Esmo's partner, Yorwin, was always there with us, helping with the bulls when we were sort of washing them and walking them, and myself and my wife, and we were all part of, a really, really good team. And that it is important. We have to have a team, and we have to have the right cattle.
Yeah. There we go. And wise words, exactly. And I mentioned then that you did go on to Robert Graham's, and again, talking of team, when you get there, I mean, it's quite an elite list of people who've worked there at Strathallan, and you'd have slotted right in.
Yeah, it just I went up there to see the Blue Domain sheep that Robert had. He invited me up there to look at the sheep, and then he said, "How about you come up and work with me?" And I didn't realize he had an opportunity then, but Danny Wiley was just leaving, and he needed somebody there. And obviously my background was, because he said, you bring your Blue Domains with you, because I said, that's a good ram there. You can use that ram if you're working with me. I'm thinking, this is like just lead me into it. But obviously my background of dairying, and I have my own sheep, my own Blue Domains, and then, doing well with the beef cattle. So really it was a very, very good fit, because over there I took on the role as pedigree livestock manager is what the term was, but I was overseeing obviously the dairy, which was the Jersey herd, which was I helped further develop with the Grahams, a fabulous group of Limousin cattle, and then the breeds of sheep. We had the Blue Domain, the Rouge de l'Ouest, the Bergeron, and we did disperse the Suffolks the year that I got there because, as Robert said, they're a lot of work and he hadn't really just hit the high time with them. So
we're hoping to get Robert on the podcast. He's not declined. I've just not quite got round to fitting him in, but we will do. But a great man, a man I've always looked up to, and I think a lot of other people as well. But you say about the dairy, not just a farmer, what a great business head he had on him to set up that dairy there now, which of course people who listen to this podcast who don't know, of course, is now Graham's Milk, and international company I think they are now, and forever growing, and that was the start going into high quality milk production, and again to take stockmanship again.
And so on the dairy side, the jerseys just were right in there, because the important thing is that people say, "Oh, jerseys are a little hobby cow," and why jerseys? And I said, it's the high components, which today are more and more at play today. But Robert had the foresight to know the value of them, because I said everybody goes out for a meal, and if you have a quality soup, it's got a cream base. If you have a sauce on your steak, it's got the cream base. You'll have cream on your dessert, and you'll have cream in your coffee. And at the time, quotas were lowering the butterfat content of the milk, so we're getting poorer and poorer quality. So the Grahams went against the grain and pushed on with the jerseys, and we got a fabulous herd of jerseys set up there.
Not frightened to change direction, Robert, is he? I think he had a chocolate. Remember, he had a chocolate shop, didn't he, there in Bridge of Allen somewhere? I mean,
yeah. He's had a few dabbles in different things, but his passion is the livestock. And I think I've said before that Robert Graham, those that don't know him, you could send him out into a field of chickens and he'd come out with the best one under his arm. I mean, there's no way you could get past him in anything. And he always such a kind man, gentlemanly manner, but taught me a lot on marketing and promoting too, because I'd already got into the showing, but to value your customer, I mean, if and really provide them what they want, and so that what we were doing there with the limousines and the sheep.
That's what stood him in good stead. Let's just dissect those limousines a little bit again. At the top of the tree when you got there, I think straight into the Highland Show, probably in at the top or very near the top anyway. And you were the man to beat again. But people getting fed up with standing behind you.
Yeah, I know. And it just again, I'll say that it's all credit to the breeders of these stock. I mean, I can do what I can do, and I will put the maximum effort. I always say it's 110%, and all the preparation, the feeding, the care at home is vital. But so it has to be the right stock. But then bringing them out at the right time is important too, and knowing when to leave them at home too. That's sometimes something that people just have trouble doing. But yeah, in 1992 we're out. I think we won at Air Show, and then Graham's Arabella was champion at the Highland Show in '92. I think that was the first time that Robert had champion limousine. I think he'd been reserve about 3 times, so it was quite nice to step that one step further on for the Grahams.
And as you mentioned, Danny, there, pay a bit of homage to Danny too, because Danny and Danny's been on this podcast too, because a great stockman who'd been there beforehand. So the cows would be there, the animals would be there when you went there, but you still got to. Yeah, you still got to keep that going and leave a legacy, which you have. I mean, Robert's left his own legacy, I know, but it's still winning now, still winning into beat champions. It's still the top man to beat in the limousines for 30 years.
Absolutely,
30 years later.
And it's guys, like Danny Wiley and those. I mean, we share that same view of good stock, and Danny went on to run his own stock and using what we sort of gain as we go along from working with these fabulous guys and their top stock. I mean, it's quite an effort, but it's great. And when we've got good people in there, it makes a world of difference,
Sure. And I want to go on to the sheep, because that's where I came in a little bit, but just finish on that, or carry on with that, with the limousines there. You went back to the Royal Welsh, having won it 3 times on the bounce for Esmore. Yeah. And what did you do? You go and win it again with a different
go win it again with the limousine pair, and it was that was to me, that was one thing that stuck in my mind. To change camps totally, be in a different country, come down. I think the headlines in the paper was sort of like the prodigal son returns or something like that. It was and still, and those awards were at the Royal Welsh were grand occasions. I mean, the TV, the and it's all about, so those shows, we don't do it just for the glory and the silverware or ribbons. it's promoting and marketing. I always say when we put stock out there, it's the shop window, and we have to maximize the potential they're there. So all the while, if that show is 4 days long, they better be on top form. Any stockman that worked with me, Callum Hillhouse was great. I mean, he was a young guy at the time, and we packed the showcase and we would do the shows and do a great job. And at the time, we'd be showing the limousines. We got to show in the jerseys. And the sheep too, so it was quite the roadshow when we hit the road. And at the window, down in the Royal Welsh, there was one year, and I think that might have been 93, could have been 93 or 94, and we had it was 94, I think, because we had Jersey Champion, and we had the Reserve Daddy interbreed with those. We were reserve with a Fitzhugh that year, so I slipped up there. Reserve Champion Bergeron and Reserve Male Champion Rouge. So, I mean, it was like, busy times. We had to make sure that everybody was available to help out.
Yeah, and work as a team, which you did. And I mean, let's go into the sheep a little bit. The reason I know you is you and Janet were sparring partners with my mother and father when we first went into Blue Domains going back into the 80s. And you took your sheep, as you said, up to Robert Graham, and then you get there. You had Danny Wiley's been in there as well, helping Robert. Well, between them, putting a great flock of Rouge and a great flock of Berrichons together. So you're talking to the top end of the sheep market very much.
Yes, yeah, and again, it was the top stock. I mean, as I was saying about Robert's selection criteria, would be up there, and then the likes of Danny and those, would make sure that the next generation is equally as good. So it really put us in good stead, and it was. And the Blue Domains, we actually, I took my Blue Domains up to Robert Graham's. And I dispersed them, I think 2 years later, because the first major show we went to I had Janet show our Blue Domains, and I was showing Robert. And in the Yearling U class, Janet was standing first, I was second, and it was pretty embarrassing for me. I just felt bad. Robert Graham said, if I'm going to get beaten, it might as well be by somebody that I know. I said, you know him, you're paying him. Anyway, and that particular ewe was one. It was a Bonerbo ewe, and she went on to be champion for myself at the Highland that year, and reserve interbreed. And it was Danny's brother Walter that showed her in the interbreed, because I was busy with the limousines at that time. So, I mean, that was one of the highlights of my sheep side of it. But Robert's sheep were fantastic. Everyone was, we could bring them out. They had power. We have to have power in stock or livestock.
Yeah, it did, and I said with the Rouge as well, because in the heyday back then with the Blues and the Rouge, maybe not so much the Berrichons there, although he saw the merit in those, of course. And yes. You mentioned Callum Hillhouse. Hi, Callum, if you're listening. Callum and Emma still breeding Berrichons to this day, so I'll get from their experience back to there. But yeah, was always the man to beat. But yeah, you personally, as I said, my dad, I think we won the interbreed at the Royal Welsh in 1992, I think, with a pair of Blue Domains. But you would be our oppos basically on most of these events, but all good mates, and those Blues, they were great times we had, didn't we, with the Blues?
Yes, it was great, and it would be probably about 3 years ago now, 3 or 4 years ago. I was up at the Royal Highland show, and in the sheep lines we had together, there was Finlay McGowan, Jim Goldie, Stuart Stevenson, and myself, and we stood there, and we had a little bit of a discussion about those heady days and how it was. It was quite it was quite a piece of business that they were doing anyway. I was on the receiving end of paying for some of them stock, but I could see then, just in the early days of developing my own flock, was just the attention to detail, making sure you get into the right line, breeding them the right way,
Yeah, and then you broke my mum's heart because you upped and moved to Canada. I'm sure she fancied you, Steve. So you upped and moved in Canada, and then chapter 2. We've got written down here, I think, chapter 2, because what age were you there, and what prompted you to did Robert fire? What happened? I mean, when you suddenly decided to go, what went on?
It was I was at Graham's. People thought I was off my head. I mean, you could not better the position I had. I was pedigree livestock manager, living in a big 7-bedroom mansion for the Grahams. the finest stock. And if we wanted to change anything at the time, because I'd been there a little while, Robert would be right up for it. We had lots of discussions about breeding different things or developing other things. Everything was great, but I just thought to myself, and I had strong connection with Canada from my earlier days. I thought to myself, I had two sons at the time. They were like 8 and 10 years old. And I was speaking to somebody in Canada. I'd been over there on another trip there, actually looking at black limousines at the time then. And I was just really quite taken by the country. I'd always had a love for it. And I said to Janet, look, I just think, there's opportunity we could move to Canada. And it was hard for Robert Graham to understand the move, as many others. But I said, at the end of my working career, I'm just as good as my last job. And if I'm unable to perform anymore, then, I'm going to have to just step aside, as it were. So I thought I need to, while I was still young enough, and I was still then probably in my mid-30s, I was ready to jump. And I know the boys were keen. Janet wasn't quite so keen, but we just went out there on a working partnership initially to source limousines, in particular black limousines for UK and Europe, and it blossomed from there, because we never looked back, really. I mean, I say to people, you've got to look for opportunities and take them. So it was. I don't regret ever that move. It was very fruitful for myself. I mean, I just leapt forward in many ways, really.
Okay. And I think that year was 1997 that you went out that way. So where did you go to when you got there? I mean, did you start on your own straight away?
No, 1997 was when we moved to Canada. We arrived in the July of 97. Working with a pedigree limousine herd, Beldoon Limousine, was a young couple that were very much on the same wavelength as myself. They had good herd of cows. They had reds and blacks. They had polled and horned, and they offered me an opportunity to work along with them. And the black in particular was something that I needed to focus on, because I had strong beliefs that there would be a market for those. And the following year, I had Jim Goldie came over, and Brian Jones from South Wales, and they came over selecting embryos and stock from ourselves, and together with a few others. So it was good business, and finding the right stock was important again. Mm-hmm. And but I quickly then got into. I was asked by some guys again in the dairy world to see if I would select a breeding stock for export orders. So I thought, well, I was sort of self-employed, and I would do some of that. And very quickly, I became involved with Shaw Holsteins, which was the leading exporter of livestock from Canada at the time, or one of the leading exporters. And within a year, I think it was within about 8 months, I was general manager of Shaw Holstein. So I was right at the front end of sourcing livestock again, mainly dairy, but there was some beef cattle. And in the final stages of my export business, there was some sheep involved in exports, but primarily it was top dairy cattle. And we ran auction sales, and we exported to many different countries around the world. And it was quite the time, really, when I think back. I mean, we did a lot, and it was really, again, attention to detail, making sure the customer has what he's looking for. And it was the experience that I had over the years that equipped me right to do this job.
When you were in the sharp end of it, of course, back then towards the end of the 90s, the trade in embryos started to pick up, and still going on to this day, thankfully. The trade in embryos, and the people that put their faith in buying an embryo just from seeing its parents, it's a hard thing. It was hard enough to crack originally, to buy something that you can't see. Until you talk about Jim Goldie, the great breeders we just mentioned, who understand that if the cow's right, then the embryos will be right. But it is a hard thing for people to buy a blind embryo from somebody across the water there. But as you said, you were the conduit and gave them the confidence.
Yeah, it is when it's microscopic and they're paying quite a bit of money for it. It is a case of you're the brave and the focus that will step forward. But now it's a matter of course. And as it developed there with the export business in the time that I was involved at the front end of that, it changed a lot. And during that time that I was with Shaw Holsteins, I was voted to represent the export of all livestock out of Canada. So I joined CLGA, Canadian Livestock Genetics Association. I was 7 years on the board of directors, and there was only about 10 of us covering the whole of exports of livestock. And it was we were closely affiliated with the government, and we were developing markets in different parts of the world, and shoring up those that have already been doing business with us. And then 2 years I was president of that Canadian Livestock Genetics Association, which was a very, very honoured position that I was find myself in. And with that, I travelled with the agriculture ministers. I think there was 3 different agriculture ministers of Canada I worked along with. I travelled with the chief veterinary officer, and to countries. I had dinner with President Fox from Mexico, and I think to myself, I just come from a dairy farming background, and I work with these good cows in Wales and in Scotland. But to find yourself in positions like that, and many times going down to Washington to negotiate trade post BSE, which we had to come out of, and obviously my experience of BSE, I knew a little bit about it. So when it was all crumbling about us, I felt that I was in a position that I could speak from experience and help reestablish trade with some of these countries. So it was a very pressured position. I did feel like I felt very responsible. When you go to these countries, and you get down into the Senate buildings in the US and that to try and negotiate trade, and they're bound and bent that they don't want you, and it's difficult. So, but, we came through it, and we were back in business. But leading on to what I was saying with it, so after the likes of BSE, I said to the export industry that it's not going to be business as usual. In Canada, I said we were always loading stock on trucks and planes and boats or whatever. But I said, I think we really have to focus now on frozen embryos and semen as the way to transfer genetics. And I think it is a much better way to move things around the world, because I found it in Russia. We'd send dairy heifers to Russia, and it was tough for those sort of fine-skinned dairy heifers from Canada to establish themselves in the climate in Russia. But when we put embryos in, and I had been over there and seen the calves from recipients in Russia, and they were born with a coat of hair already that the recipient mother had already equipped them to establish them in better form than if we would have just got them on a plane and sent them. So I do think that, we have to understand. I say to anybody that's marketing stock, I said, if you think we have the best stock, I said, you have to look at the climates around the world. You have to look at nutrition. So when I was head of this export federation, I said that we have to not just sell the animals, we have to sell the expertise. So I was instrumental in making sure we had nutritional people that would go out and talk to the importing country, and just to see what we were going to work with, and also the veterinary side of it to make sure that we're not going to encounter any problems that's going to derail our business. So it was really good. But I felt confident because I'd worked with good stock and good people, and I still feel like I was like should have been a fish out of water, because I was just a young guy and I was head of that the export. But everybody was confident that I could take it on and do the job. So
brilliant. Flying high, absolutely flying high. Stephen, we were aware, I think, in the UK that you're up there at the top of the tree, and great. And then just moving on then, because the sheep came back into it. The last time I saw you, probably 10 years ago, you said that you got a flock of Texel sheep, and I'm right in thinking there weren't any Texels there when you started?
There wasn't, and I think it would be 98 or 99 I bought the first 2 Texels that I found and in Canada, and they were in Regina, Saskatchewan. For anybody that wants to take a quick trip across Canada, it takes a little while. We were showing limousines at Regina, and it took us pretty much 3 days driving to get there. But so coming back, I had a couple of Texels in the front of the trailer too. So it was a good little journey, and that got me started. And obviously, again, the UK background and experience, I knew there was some opportunity, and the sheep in Canada needed that easy fleshing. So I took that on and encouraged and promoted the Texel breed. There were people that were involved, but they were spread out all over Canada. So I quickly put together an auction sale on our own place. Myself and Janet and the boys, Peter and Robert, really got on and helped us with this auction sale. So for 7 years, I ran an on-farm auction, but I had Texels from different parts of Canada would come in there, and I'd also provide delivery back out to these various parts of Canada. So it became a very, very important calendar event in the sheep business, and we encouraged plenty of, and just like you would in the UK, hospitality. We had lamb on the bun, and people said, you've got a big crowd of people. There were hundreds of people would come to the farm, and they said they're just coming for the lamb on the bun. I said that's fine by me. They fill in the bleachers and make it look even busier. So and enjoying good lamb, and that's kind of it too. So it's so.
Yeah. I feel I missed one section of your career that we'll just drop back into, but just sticking with those Texels, I know you've had visits from the British Texel Society or representatives from coming over there. I think Keith Campbell's name was mentioned as one of them, but a few people came over. Were they bringing you embryos, or were they buying embryos back?
Well, Keith and Irene came out. I think he was chairman of the society at the time, and came out to the Royal Winter Fair in Toronto, and we had the British Texel Society sponsor some banners, because it was all about the banners at these shows in Canada, and they had a great time. And I had a couple of UK rams that we took semen from, but they didn't come from Keith, but it was difficult to get them to qualify, and that's the important thing. Anybody who talks about export, I mean, I can talk all day about that, because it's very difficult to qualify some of these species and get the product across. But the shows, I mean, I think there would be 4, 6, 7, 8 years. We pretty much won the Texels. I've got banners that I could decorate a wall with, but it's great to have that as memory. And then the sales, I mean, I still hold the Canadian record for sheep at auction in Canada, which was the highest selling male, highest selling female. And that wasn't what we set out to do. We just encouraged more people to get involved, and there was great. We exported to Mexico and the US also. So it was very much,
a huge business, right place, right time, Steve, as you have been in a lot of cases. Well, just step back a little bit, because you did have a partnership with the Connell family, and I probably should give them a shout out as well, because you said you've just been over there.
Yes, and it was that was during that time that I had the Texels and that. So Wickethorn Farms, which was Craig and Moira Connell, there, they've been a big part of the influence that I had over there in Canada, because they were themselves that came over from Scotland. They've been over there now 40 years. Sadly, we lost my dear friend Craig 2 years ago, which was a very, very sad happening. But my time with them was following on from Shaw Holsteins. Craig and Moira Connell and their son Lloyd offered me an opportunity to share in a business partnership exporting. So I left Shaw Holsteins and did exactly what I was doing there, but I did it in a business partnership, because the Connells had been feeding stock for Shaws, and they could see what we were doing, and it was certainly worked good, and selecting the right stock. So myself and the Connells set to in this partnership, and it was post BSE, so it was not the best time, but Craig Connell assured me that it would be a good move, and I took them on their word, because it turned out very, very good piece of business and lucrative too. I mean, we traveled all across Canada sourcing stock, and quite often Craig and I would travel together, and lots of great stories of being on the road across in Western Canada sourcing stock. But if you find the right stock for the right people, you've got business for life, and that's what has set me right. And the Connells today, their business, I was just over there recently, and it's a huge business they have there, and the next generation of family are taking it on, rolling with it. They're milking about 500 cows. They've changed from feeding dairy heifers. They changed back into, they did do a little bit of beef feedlot before, but they've got probably about 2,500 beef cattle on feed, buying them and fattening them, and run a large cropping operation too. So it's a great family business, and they've been a big part and supportive of what we were doing over there. Even from when we first got there, the Connells reached out and invited the family over to any events, barbecues and that. So they've been a big part of what we did in Canada, and sort of just being there as a sounding block and a bit of a safety mechanism. But I mean, encouragement. You wouldn't find anybody in any sector better than Craig Connell for encouraging and pushing on. I mean, I did have a small partnership, but actually I owned some red limousines at the time, and the export to EU and UK had gone, and Craig suggested that I sell them, and I said, well, there's a lot of money in them, and Craig said to me, look, I'll tell you what I'll do, I'll buy a half share in them and we'll move them to my place. And every time I'd go over there, every couple of weeks, there'd be a few less and a few less. And Craig said, oh, it was empty. It just, there's no point in keeping that. So I sent it in the fat. And he got rid of all. And it's the best thing I ever did. It's sometimes you have to just cut loose. And that's what I did. And the guy was, as I say, just very influential. But as they all were, going back to Esmore Evans, Robert Graham, and Craig Connell, they're masters at the game, and they do share that quality of they're not sort of keeping everything to themselves. They're happy to work with people that are prepared to work with them, and that's what it's all about.
Fantastic experience as well. And then being a good judge of cattle is one thing. Being a good judge of character is another one, and that's probably how you picked up those roles, Steve, as well.
Vital, and traveling the world as I've done. I know the people right away that I can work with and those that I can't. And, it just takes a lot of dead time out of the way. If you can pick the right people, then, it will work. And my two sons, just to touch on that, two sons are still out there now. I've got 4 granddaughters, but eldest son, Peter, he's running a massive earth moving operation, I guess they'd call it, but it's Dennis Dirtworks is the partnership he's in with. They're a Dutch family that own this business, but Peter is the sort of right-hand guy, and right now he's building feedlots for 40, 50, 60,000 head, and he does it all from just looking at a bare piece of ground to laying it all out and get all the guys in. He probably have about 120 guys that know what they're doing, because Peter's sort of ahead of the game, and he does a fantastic job. They say down in southern Alberta, if you want a feedlot built, you speak to Pete Jones, so that's a great job for him.
Excellent.
And the youngest boy Robert, decided he wanted to be a pilot, so we put him through his private pilot's license, and now he's been I think 6-7 years at captain, flying 737s in northern Canada, out to Vancouver, down to Calgary, Toronto, mainly in Canada. But he and his family are doing a fabulous job, and it's nice when I get out there and I get to fly with my son, so that's good.
Yeah, lovely. And when you get out there and get to fly, you could do the bloody plane yourself, Steve, because you're still traveling. I spoke to you a few weeks ago. You were off to Kazakhstan judging Hereford cattle, and then they say you've just been in Canada just now, but you're judging a lot of stock around the world, which again is something that comes with the honor that comes with being good at what you do.
Yeah, and that is, I'm really honored to be asked to do these things and meet different people, and people use me as a sounding block, and I'm very, very much got to a stage in my life where I'm anxious that I have information, I have knowledge and experience to give, and I should get it out there, because we have to adapt and we have to change. But out in Kazakhstan, for instance, that's just a recent trip there, and I mean, they've got a massive country there, desperate to develop their beef industry. But I judged the show, and the Supreme Champion Bull that I awarded, a brand new tractor was what the prize was. I mean, that's quite a show. I mean, we might have won these major shows in the UK, but nobody gave us a brand new tractor. But when you look there, it's vast. So, I mean, you would get excited to say we can sell them genetics. And I was working with the British Embassy over there too. And I said to them, unfortunately, we can't get what they want out of the UK because, well, now we have blue tongue. But before that, it was very difficult to move stock. But when you say that, the guys will tell me there that those cows out on the range have to walk probably between 10 to 12 kilometers a day to find enough to eat. So if we're going to sell them a bull, that bull has got to do a lot of miles in a day in order to find the cows and breed them and then find the other one. I mean, you have to understand these countries. Huge countries.
Totally agree. I've had on this podcast a couple of times PJ Butler. I'm not sure if you and PJ know each other, but PJ judges all over the world, and that's exactly his mantra: is that different animals suit different places. And to take an animal out of Scotland and stick it into a Hereford out of Herefordshire and stick it in that environment wouldn't work. But then that's why you can draw on places like Australia and draw on places like the USA who have this genetics going to.
I've got business partners in different parts now that I can, and that's what my business card says. I mean, there's I've got international network for livestock. So, and myself, I've had native Angus, Australian lowline Angus, traditional Herefords, and just recently, a couple of years ago, I bought into the Aussie White, which is a breed that I see a massive future in, which is the hair sheep out of Australia that's been developed that has got a fantastic carcass, but doesn't grow any wool. And people say, a sheep without wool is strange, but we as farmers or even from centuries ago, we would be encouraged to grow better quality wool, grow more wool, because we were needing that as garments and fiber. And now the poor sheep are having to carry this wool around. It's a nightmare because it costs you more to take it off than it's worth, and we have problems with fly strike and everything else. But so I think we just have to roll it back and say, hey, if it's not necessary, don't put the livestock through the challenges of growing this if it's not a commodity that we can do anything with,
Yeah, and you're talking great people. I'm fortunate enough to have Graham Gilmore's been on this podcast, and I had dinner with him down in Australia. Of course, developed the Australian White there, and another very clever and foresighted man. I mean, these people don't realise what a revolution that they're creating, but when they bring something along like this, Steve. But it's interesting that you bought into that, because you sound like a man that's got your finger on the pulse.
Yeah, well, I met Graham down in Brazil a number of years ago when he was sourcing the stock to develop that breed, and I thought he sounded like, again, judge of character, but he's a guy that knew what he was doing, and he was talking about the different blend of breeds he was putting into this, and I thought that'd be fascinating. Well, hey presto, a number of years later he has got something that's really shaking the industry. So
there is a bit of a demand for them. I hear noises from one or two people, I won't say names, who are interested in getting into that breed because of that. And I think to breed a sheep in Scotland, particularly with no wool, sounds like a no-no, but seemingly where Graham Gilmore's got these sheep up there in the Blue Mountains, when they're in higher and harder weather than Scotland can ever come up with, so these sheep will survive in that. And I think because of that, there has been a lot of interest in them, because I mean, Graham's just won everything in the shows this year again, but he's won the biggest. I don't think anybody beat him in anything that he took to the show. He won all the interbreeds.
So they are the phenotype is bang on, but also they're not growing the wool, and they've got a carcass that is phenomenal. So I mean, it does tick all the boxes. And as you say, people think, oh no, wool, this is not good. They've got a dense hair coat, somewhat like a goat, but even stronger than a goat's hair coat. And the donors that I selected to take embryos from a couple of years ago, I particularly went to the wetter part of Australia to pick those that are minus 20 and wet in the summer months. So I was trying to pick them that they would adapt to the UK too. So
yeah, you and I had a chat a couple of weeks ago now, I think, and we mentioned Dorpers, we mentioned Valley Black Nose, I mentioned a few other sheep that are on the horizon for within the modern sheep industry, and you've been dabbling in just about all of those, I think, and a lot of those countries too.
So people laugh at me, so we'll just touch on the Valley Black Nose. I mean, I don't think I've ever been involved with a breed that's been so rolled the till numbers quite as well as the Valley Black Nose did for me. I was 10 years in them. I've still got the Valley Black Nose. I've still got involvement in New Zealand and the USA and Australia. Canada, I had a small flock in Canada, and this was a nice little story. As I bought an 8-bedroom cave house in Spain 2 years ago, and I put a rude offer into these Spanish couple because I loved the place. I mean, it was just gorgeous. So I put a rude offer in, and they said, yeah, they would take that. And I thought, oh, no, now I've got to pay for it. So 2 days later, I had a phone call from a lady in Canada wanting to buy a couple of Valley Blacknose females. And I said, well, if I sell anything, I might just sell the flock I've got. So I had 5 males, 4 females, 3 of which were just 7 weeks old. They were embryo lambs. So I did a quick calculation and thought, looked at the value of the cave house, and I came up with 148,000 Canadian dollars would be what would buy the flock. And they said, yeah, that's fine, we'll take them. So people say there isn't money in sheep, but I mean, there was certainly money in that deal because I've got myself an 8-bedroom cave house in Spain by selling 9 sheep in Canada. So
now you've got to go and renovate it, Steve. That's the next thing.
No, honestly, that was one thing that I've done, Andy. Yeah. I saw plenty of them that weren't renovated. This one here has got everything in it. It even had 120 bottles of wine were left in it. So it's got everything there. So and like this day and age with political climates like they are and scary sort of saber rattling going on, I think somewhere underground to live is probably a very nice idea. So I'll have lots of friends shortly, I'm sure.
I'll be down there with you. There with you. Steve, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. A fascinating story, and I knew it would be. And we've chatted a couple of times, and we've both been busy away there. And hey, hopefully we'll catch up with you. You'll know a lot of people who listen to this podcast. So you'll probably start getting some tickets coming in saying that you said the wrong things or the right things. But I found that just really interesting to hear what you got to.
That's absolutely fine. I mean, I've been blessed by I say blessed. I mean, there's no such thing as luck. You make your own luck, but take an opportunity and driving with it. I would encourage anybody in the business to do it. And don't stay in the UK. I mean, it is tough in the UK with agriculture. Then we have to morph into something else. I said about the Valley Blacknose. People say, what are you doing with them? Making money. You know, you just have to just watch the bouncing ball, be confident, and travel. Mm-hmm. If you get the chance to travel, you know too, Andy. I mean, it opens up doors, opportunities, or at least gives you the insight into what's out there. So
certainly yeah. Wise words. And I know we were in Australia recently, and I had the young ones on the podcast who were doing the Young Challenge down there. And it was great to speak to those and them realizing that there are opportunities all around the world. And nowadays, with the way of travel, anywhere, the world is your oyster very much. So,
it is very much, yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's great, and just focus on breeding the right stock, and I think, I mean, we could talk all day long about the breeding of stock, but people talk about good bulls. Please remember the female has a big part to play, even bigger part than the bull. So I mean, you have to have right females and then match a male to them, because everybody thinks that if the bull or the ram sells for 50,000-60,000. Needs to be used. There's probably one in that very same sale sold for 5,000 would be a better match to your cows, you know. So don't get sort of blinkered by it. Just concentrate on the breeding stock and get to visit other herds.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, wise words. As I said, Steve, we haven't caught up physically for a while, but definitely we'll be catching up with you. And you never know, on your way down to Spain, if you're driving, you can knock on my door here in France.
Well, I might just do that. We'll share some more stories over a bottle of red. That'd be great.
There we go. Well, I know you've got a lot more stories to share yet, and we have had a chat about maybe getting some of that down into print too. So there could be more from Steve Jones yet. But I've found this absolutely fascinating, Steve, I have to say, and it's a great pleasure to talk to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Top Lines and Tails podcast. And as always, we'd like to give a shout out and a thanks to our sponsors, Harbro. And if tups and gimmers are needing a final bloom before the sales, consider using some of their Olympic sheep mash. Yes, Harbro's Olympic sheep mash. Widely used, easy to feed, and it helps increase appetite when you need it the most. And of course, it can be fed alongside Harbro's long-established range of quality pedigree sheep feeds. So pop down to Harbro's local store and ask the question about their Olympic sheep mash and their other range of products, or contact your local Harbro representative, who I'm sure will be willing to help you with any queries that you have.